Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And as always, I have a fantastic and very interesting guest with me today. His name is Thomas Cataldo. He is a licensed acupuncturist, founder and owner of Golden Touch Acupuncture, whose mission is to become the leading provider of traditional Chinese medicine, as well as offering herbal medicines and free community classes for Tai Chi, Qigong, and nutrition. Prior to becoming an acupuncturist, Thomas was a CFP and a computer programmer who had an awakening after watching 9/11 unfold from his office window on Long Island. He also studies Buddhism, Taoism, and Jungian psychology. Thomas, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's a pleasure.
You have the most fascinating background, especially going from, being a certified financial planner and the programmer to something that is almost like the complete opposite with the natural
Yes,
health and healing.
yes. Well, it started back when I was a kid because I had actually 7 concussions when I was growing up. From about age 6 to 24, I had one concussion. I got hit in the head with a line drive baseball
Ooh.
off my brother's bat. Yeah, that hurt. And then I had amnesia for about a day. And then I got my nose got a hairline fracture from playing on the playground in elementary school. Then I fell off a bicycle when I was about 12 years old and got a huge lump on my head. Then I got 2 concussions in high school football. Then I was in a car accident where I was not driving and my head hit the visor when a friend was driving. And then the last one, I was in a skiing accident. I was skiing up at Killington, up in Vermont, and I went
Hmm.
to do a jump. And Vermont, it's all ice, right? So
Hmm.
I went to do a jump, and I thought I was going to come down on ice, but it was powder. So
Oh,
my tips went under, and I went flying, and my head hit the ice. And then I started getting a headache 24/7. And I went to my family doctor, really nice guy,
mhm.
went to the family doctor, and it was basically drug of the month club. Okay. So, every month he'd be like, "Oh, we got to figure this out." And I'm like, "Yeah, we do. I got a headache all day, every day." He's like, "Yeah, we got to figure this out. Try this drug, try this drug." So you try a drug, you get diarrhea. You try another drug, you get constipation. You try another drug, you can't sleep. Another drug, you can't wake up. And so it goes on and on. Then after a couple of years, I said, well, he was a nice guy. So I didn't tell him to his face, but basically I fired him. And then I went to a neurologist, paid huge sums of money, and he did MRIs and X-rays and all these tests. And I go, so what do you think is going on? And he goes, well, what do you think? I go, me? I go, I'm paying you. He goes, what do you think? I go, I got a concussion. He's like, yeah, it'll probably go away. And I was like, oh, I'm serious. I am completely serious. That's what he told me. He goes, it'll probably go away. And then I went to another doctor and then another physical therapy, drugs and this and that. And after years and years of having a headache 24/7, and I mean a headache, not a splitting migraine headache, but just one of those feels like your head is in a vice kind of thing.
Hmm.
So after years of this, no satisfaction. Back then, there was no internet. So I went to the public library and I read every book I could find on diet and nutrition. And I came up with a plan for myself. It was
Hmm.
oatmeal for breakfast, grilled chicken Caesar for lunch, salmon and a piece of broccoli for dinner. I did that every single day. And then I did 1 hour of exercise every other day, where I did 20 minutes of calisthenics and 40 minutes of aerobics. I run or ride a bicycle or something.
Hmm.
And after a couple of months, every symptom I had went away. Everything, all gone. Okay. I lost all the few extra pounds I had. People who hadn't seen me in years would be like, hey, you look fantastic. And I'd be like, you know what? I feel fantastic. And the whole thing was because I didn't eat American wheat, number one. I didn't eat unhealthy fats, number two. And
Hmm.
number three, no sugar and no alcohol.
Hmm.
So after that, and that was 25 years ago,
Hmm.
since that time, I have discovered why that diet works so well. Okay. And the reason it works so well is really for three reasons. Number one, inflammation was my problem. And the way
Mm-hmm.
you reduce inflammation is by not inflaming it, okay, to make a pun. The way you reduce inflammation is by not eating sugar, not drinking alcohol, which is a toxin to every cell in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and staying away from American wheat and American wheat products and American sugar products like dextrose and maltose and all those chemical sounding things that they add to food in a box.
Mm-hmm.
So when I stopped eating all that stuff and I started eating um, healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, coconut, ghee, tallow, and good quality proteins, chicken, salmon, and leafy green vegetables, which contain electrolytes, which are essential, and getting sunlight. Okay. Basically, all the inflammation went away. Every symptom I had went away. And gaining or losing weight is a symptom of your diet, not, it's not a problem in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is a symptom. So, what I've also found later on is that things have gotten progressively worse. Okay. So if you think back to the end of World War II, okay, my father was in World War II. He came home, started a family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was that was the American high from 1945 to about 1965
Mm-hmm.
was the best time ever in American history. So people were cooking with tallow. There was good quality foods in the supermarket. But then, right after I was born in the early 60s, things started going downhill. And I noticed that it wasn't just the food, but, all the different events. I was in Boy Scouts for a couple of years, and people would tell me, oh, last year was so much better. A
Mm-hmm.
couple of years ago, things were so much better. The schools started deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
There was more, schools. I went to public school, and schools became a center for three things: drugs, juvenile delinquency, and teenage pregnancy. Okay. I have two sons. They're both homeschooled. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Starting about 20 years ago, we started getting a large percentage of our food from the Amish in Pennsylvania. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're from.
Mm-hmm.
And what would happen would be an Amish man and his son would drive a truck with no markings on it, and because you're not allowed to transport raw milk through Manhattan. Aha,
That's
it's illegal.
right.
Okay. So they would drive this truck with no labeling on it, and they would deliver milk, yogurt, eggs, meats. Okay. And we would put our order in, and every week we would pick up our food. So we've been drinking raw milk for 10, 20 years, easy. So what I discovered was that not only do you have to have no sugar, no starch, no alcohol, no American wheat, none of these unhealthy seed oils, including vegetable, peanut, and canola, but also you need to get healthy bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So you get your healthy bacteria from raw milk, sourdough bread, and honey. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
only I only consume Manuka honey. It's my favorite. It feels great. So you get your good bacteria, and I found out later on that tallow, which everybody used to use tallow. Tallow was the main cooking fat in America. But what happened was they invented canola oil, which is some seed oil that they bubble hydrogen through it. It's
Uh-huh.
horrible. Okay. I'm not using that. So because of that, we don't go out to eat that much, maybe once a week. Okay. And that's even a stretch. And I make my own bread. We only buy grass-fed beef. We only buy, I learned the difference between regular chicken and air chilled. Regular chicken, they they put the chicken through a series of baths in chlorine and a bunch of other
Yes.
chemicals. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds horrible. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I only buy air chilled if I'm even going to buy chicken. And we get our milk from a local farm. We get, I'm in Texas, so we get beef,
Mm-hmm.
from, I'm surprised the cows don't show up on my door. Um, so so every year that goes by, I find out more and more why this
Mm-hmm.
diet worked so well. Okay. Inflammation, bad fats, bad proteins, and a lack of electrolytes. Okay. And on top of that, you want to have your sunlight and fresh air, and you don't even need that much exercise. I was doing an hour every other day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So to me, in my acupuncture practice, what I do is when I get a new patient in, the first thing I do is go through, whatever their symptoms are. And then I ask them about their diet. Okay. And I say, okay, how much do you go out to eat? Do you make any of your own food? If the answer is a lot and we don't, then I know that there's a problem. So, number one, if somebody has any kind of health problem, diet, exercise, and sunlight is number two. So I have what I call the four pillars of a good life: diet and exercise, which includes, sunlight and fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
good sleep,
Mm-hmm.
honorable work, and good relationships with everybody around you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So some people have toxic relationships at work. So I say, okay, quit your job. Well, I can't. Well, all right. Maybe you can't quit today, but here's what you do: devise a plan to get out. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if it takes 1 year or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Devise a plan, work your plan, and get out. Okay. Because I can't tell you how many people I've treated whose jobs are killing them.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, literally, their jobs are killing them. And sometimes I catch them early and sometimes I catch them late. When I catch them late, a lot of times they're so entrenched in the workaholic, fast food, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I got to take a vacation, go on vacation, hurry up. I got to get as much in as I can during this
Mm-hmm.
vacation because I'm going back to work in a week or two. So let's hurry up. Okay. So the whole hurry up culture, the bad food, workaholics, it's not worth it. It's
Mm-hmm.
really not worth it. So my journey has been an interesting one. I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that much. But the health record, 9/11, seeing how corrupt the financial industry was. I worked at American Express
Mm-hmm.
for 9 years as a certified financial planner, and I can tell you horror stories beyond horror stories about how they steal your money.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, they have they invent they invent these terms that sound really nice. Oh, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to rehypothecate. Okay. You know what that
Mm-hmm.
means? That means they're stealing your money. Okay. Re Rehypothecation. Okay. Here's what they do. Okay. I'll give you one small example, the smallest of examples. Okay. Let's say that you're a big investment company
Mm-hmm.
and once a month, all the dividends come in from the stocks, the bonds, all these things that pay dividends. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Treasuries, corporate bonds, corporate paper, Tennessee Valley Authority. It doesn't matter. All these things pay dividends or interest or whatever the case may be. Okay. Well, you're taking in millions of dollars. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can delay distributing that money to your clients for 12 hours,
Yeah.
okay, you're collecting the interest for a day if you time it right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're collecting the interest on, $100 million. Okay. And if you can do that, it's called grabbing the float. Okay. If you can grab the float on average every day for $100 million and then you
Jeez.
invest that money, okay, well, guess what? You're making yourself millions of dollars. That's part of your bonus. So
Wow.
that's one tiny example. And you know what? Employers do the same thing. Why do you think there's a delay between the end of your pay period and the day you actually get that money in your bank?
Mm-hmm.
They can
Mm-hmm.
pay you the same day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I have one employer that right now that delays my paycheck 10 days from the end of the pay period until the moment it's in the bank. There's a 10-day delay. You know why? They're grabbing the float. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting the interest on that money. The longer they hold on to that money, the higher their average daily balance is in the bank. So they're reducing fees and they're increasing interest.
So I am so glad that you're telling us all this information because there are times when I would just, I'd keep track of the finances in the household. And there are times I'll look at, see if, this deposit has gone through or, whatever. And it's like, it's a couple of days. And I look at my husband and I say, they are intentionally withholding this money. They're not putting it in our account because they're making money off of it. And of course, he's from the South and he's really nice. And,
Too
he's like, oh,
nice.
they wouldn't do that. And I'm like, I think he believes me now. But yeah, it's,
Well,
it's, it's ridiculous.
let me tell you, the biggest scandal on Wall Street that is brewing right now that
Mm-hmm.
no one will even talk about. Okay. Let's say that it's in the early years of the stock market. Okay. And they had what's called a clearinghouse. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A clearinghouse, it was a physical building, and you had a little cubby hole where your stock certificates would live. Okay. And if you sold 100 shares of AT&T and somebody else bought 100 shares of AT&T, well, the people in the clearinghouse would say, okay, let's take that 100 share certificate from your little cubby and put it in this guy's cubby over here. Okay. The clearinghouse performs the clearing. Okay. Now, since then, clearinghouses have gotten more sophisticated. Now it's all electronic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is no paper certificates. Well, I'm sure there's some left in somebody's safe somewhere. Um, but all the clearing is done electronically. So what happens is Goldman Sachs and Fidelity and Schwab and E-Trade, they bundle all their transactions for the day and say, okay, E-Trade versus Goldman. Well, Goldman sold net 100,000 shares and E-Trade bought net 100,000 shares. So they just trade in the aggregate, okay,
Mm-hmm.
between the big brokerage firms and the clearinghouse, okay. So the there's nobody keeping track of exactly how many shares of AT&T are extant at this moment, okay. So here's another way, okay, and this ties into rehypothecation. Okay, let's say you buy 100 shares of AT&T or 1,000 or whatever, it doesn't matter. You buy 100 shares of AT&T on your E-Trade account. They're not buying 100 shares. They're just crediting your account with 100 shares of AT&T. And they know what the dividend is and all that, okay? But all they're really doing is giving you a credit on a ledger for 100 shares of AT&T. And they can do that all day, right? Well, who's keeping track of the whole thing? Well, nobody is the answer. So the biggest scandal right now that's brewing is, well, if AT&T has 100 million shares outstanding, what if the brokerage firms sold 200 million shares? Well, that would mean that there's 100 million more shares than what they're saying actually exists. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is part of rehypothecation. So with rehypothecation, what happens is you invest in a fixed annuity at 3%. Okay. And the insurance company that is part of the brokerage firm, okay, gives you your 3% annual interest. Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
compound it monthly or whatever, do you some small favor. And then what they do is they take your money and they invest it in the stock market. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they make millions and they give you 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is when you buy 100 shares of AT&T, they give you 100 shares electronically, but then they take your money and they invest it any way they see fit. They sell derivatives, they go long or short the housing market, and they do this and they do that. And then they create derivatives upon derivatives based on what you're buying and what you're selling. They strip the dividend from the stock, they strip the interest from the bond, they sell everything separately, they sell options on everything. The derivatives go so deep that no one really knows how much of anything anybody has bought or sold. Okay. Because there are so many layers of derivatives on top of the most basic financial instrument that there's no way to know for sure how much they've sold and how much they've bought. Why do you think there was the SNL scandal
Mm-hmm.
back in the 90s? Okay. Because all the banks use the same risk model, and what they do is they all buy the same things and they leverage them against each other so that when one bank collapses, they all fall down like a bunch of dominoes. Okay. And then you and I bail them out to the tune of $800 billion. Right. So now that's not just with stocks. It's the same thing with dollars, with currencies. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the money supply. We have the M1, the M2, the M3 money supply. We have the hard cash. We have money in checking accounts. We have money in savings accounts. We have
Mm-hmm.
money markets. Okay. So, um, well, who's counting all this? Well, the Fed. Well, the Fed's a private company. The Federal Reserve Bank is not federal. It has no reserves, and it's not a bank. Okay. It's a loose collusion of banks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of dollars that exists is so far beyond what's reported. Okay. That they tried to cover it up with, the latest reporting during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
saying, "Oh yeah, we issued $5,000 to every person in America, and so the money supply went up." Well, that was
Mm-hmm.
definitely covering things up a little bit, but it's the part of the biggest rumor is that not only is the number of stocks far greater than what they report, but the number of dollars is far greater than what they report. And so these are the things, how do we know? How do we know? Well, you got to count it all up and see what it is. But if we find out that the number of stocks is far beyond what was reported and the number of dollars is far beyond what's reported, if we find out that this is actually true based on some kind of metric, then it's going to blow inflation right through the roof, and the housing market will crash to, unfathomable depths before this is all out. So that's what we're facing right now is the end of fiat currency. The dollar is older than it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, most fiat currencies don't last 60 or 70 years. The dollar, I don't know, when was Bretton Woods? Right after World War II, right? So Bretton Woods was like 1948 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure it's the dollar's already almost 80 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's past its lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not looking good for the dollar. As a matter of fact, right after World War II, the dollar to the Japanese yen was about 350 yen to the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it is today? It's about 142.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So, um, now all the fiat currencies are all dying holding hands. They're all holding hands on the Titanic, okay, which is a poor joke, I'll admit. But the only things that are going to survive, in my opinion, are precious metals, commodities
Mm-hmm.
and cryptocurrencies are the only things that are going to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on to your hats, folks, because there's a very good chance that within the next couple of years, we'll make great strides into a new economy. It'll hurt, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
hurt, going to hurt a lot of people, but
Well, that's
unfortunately,
all the more reason to be able to do everything you can to keep yourself strong and healthy.
oh yeah, yeah. So on that note, um, so yeah, diet to me is number one by far. There
Mm-hmm.
is no substitute for good diet.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is the exercise. Three is the sleep. Four is the relationships. And I tell people, um, like a lot of people say, "Oh, it's so expensive to eat organic." Well, it costs me $5 or $10 a day
Mm-hmm.
to eat organic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is because I don't eat that much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm down to one meal a day, but I'm older, so I don't need it that much. I
Mm-hmm.
understand people that are younger need 2,000 calories a day. Okay. So maybe it'll cost you $10 or $20 and you can eat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's really not a big deal. Um,
Well, it's a lot cheaper in the long run than bad health.
oh, much cheaper.
And,
Yeah.
running to the doctor and taking the medications and then getting the side effects of the medications. So you have to have medications for the medication side effects. And it's just, you're in this incredible spiral that's almost impossible to get out of.
Yeah. I had a gentleman come to me one time. He goes, I went to the doctor for a sinus problem and he gave me a drug. I took the drug and it gave me an enlarged prostate. And then I went back to the doctor and he gave me two other drugs for the enlarged prostate.
It's like, we're not human beings. You're a chemistry set or a
Yeah.
chemistry experiment. It's just
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Now, so I want to go back because I'm like a dog with a bone when it comes to this tallow because
Right.
what is the difference between tallow and lard? Is it the same thing? Because
That's
I
a good
remember
question.
my grandmother used to cook. Well, both my grandmothers and even my mom for a while would use lard until they came up with nice things
Right.
like canola oil.
Yeah. And we all thought it was horrible,
Yeah.
because just the name lard. But uh, lard is from pork and
Okay.
tallow is from beef,
Okay.
and they're both fine. Okay. Um, and what happens is you render the fat at a very low heat. So when I make tallow at home, I get a bunch of, beef fat from the local butcher, and I put it on the stove in the largest pot I've got, and I make sure the temperature stays right around 200. Okay.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is because I want all the water to evaporate. Okay. And I let it sit there and simmer for like 6 to 8 hours. Okay. So once all the water evaporates, then I strain it. And what you've got is pure fat. And since there's no water in it, the bacteria will not live. So
Ah.
it stays good. Literally, I've had tallow that I've had for months, and it does not go bad because I keep it quote unquote dry. Okay.
Okay.
There's no water in there. Okay. So lard is the same thing. It's rendered pork fat, and it's great. Okay. It's natural, it's healthy. You just have to make sure. You see, the thing is that with cows eat grass.
Mm-hmm.
They're out in the sun. They eat grass. It's wonderful. Okay. Pigs eat anything they can find. Okay. Pigs will eat bugs and small mammals and, mushrooms and all kinds of plants. So it's harder to determine what's a good quality, pork diet as long as they're not grain fed.
Mm-hmm.
The cows, the pigs, the chickens. Okay. Chickens are birds. They eat
Mm-hmm.
worms and bugs. Okay. Cows eat grass. Pigs eat anything. Okay. So as long as they're just roaming around, eating whatever they naturally eat, and they're not grain fed, because the grain, what's bad for the chicken is the same thing that's bad for us. Okay. The grains. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much that grains are all that bad. It's what they do to them, you
Oh,
know?
okay.
So they soak them with the pesticides. You
Mm.
know, my son, who's 18, he came to me a couple of years ago. He said, I can't eat this bread or anything. So I was trying to make him a pizza. And I go, let me try the flour from Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some flour from Italy direct, and I made him a pizza, and he eats it no problem. And so now in my house, all we have is wheat from Italy for pizza. I also have wheat flour from France for breads and rolls. And I make my own pizza. I make my own brioche, and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you're not eating it all day long,
Mm-hmm.
I can have, even though I'm not a big fan of starch and sugar, I can
Mm-hmm.
have a roll with my grass-fed hamburger.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's fine because I know it's not the kind of wheat flour that's going to cause undue inflammation and reactions in my gut and destroy my gut bacteria and all that. And, I make sure I have my Manuka honey and my, raw milk. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that my diet is good. Okay. And I can stand a little bit of grain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I don't eat it to the end of all else.
Mm-hmm.
I keep things in good proportions. Okay.
I
So
love this.
tallow.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But I
Yeah.
just love the story about, getting the Amish driving the truck across state lines and, getting your food, like it's some sort of contraband, some kind of,
Yeah.
oh, don't get
Oh
caught,
my
don't
God.
get pulled over. When we went to Excelsior Springs a couple of months ago, where we're going to be moving, and one of my husband's friends loves this certain kind of sauerkraut, and he can't get it there in Excelsior Springs, and he knows we can get it here. So we ended up taking like a carton or of sauerkraut to him. And I'm like, are you sure this is legal? All I could picture was being stopped at the, state lines, couple gets caught,
Yeah.
smuggling sauerkraut across the state lines.
Yeah. When truth is treason, you're in a dictatorship.
Right.
And when good food is illegal, you're in a dictatorship. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, raw milk, it's illegal to transport for retail. Okay.
Jeez.
The Amish, I think the Amish just won their court case
I think they did.
for
Mm-hmm.
religious exemption with
Mm-hmm.
the vaccines, which is a whole nother story. So yeah, I think that I've noticed just with my own patients that there is a big change towards healthy food. And people
Mm-hmm.
are finally catching on. There's actually restaurants that advertise they do their cooking in tallow now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think tallow is making a big comeback. And now when I start to tell my patients about tallow, they don't look at me like I'm crazy anymore. They look at me like, oh, you make your own? You can do that? Oh, because I found it in the supermarket. Yeah, you can get it in the supermarket, but you can make your own real easy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really not hard. It's basically just sitting there for, you can do whatever you want while the thing is simmering away. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really very, very easy.
So do you
So
keep it in an open pot or pan, or do you put a lid
yeah,
on
you
it?
have to let the water come out. You got to
Okay.
let the water come out. So what I do is I have this really big stainless steel frying pan that's maybe about 3 inches deep, 3 or 4 inches deep, and probably a good 12 inches around. And I pack as much beef fat in there as I can, and
Mm-hmm.
it all reduces.
Mm-hmm.
And then halfway through, I'll spoon out the tallow
Mm-hmm.
and I put it through a strainer into a glass jar.
Mm-hmm.
And I just keep doing that a few times throughout the 6 or 8 hour process. And by the time I'm done, I wish I had a dog. I would feed him the rest of it, but he'd probably love it. But yeah, then I discard the scraps, which are,
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with them. But I've rendered it as much as I'm going to render it, and then I can usually get for like a 3 or 4 pounds of beef fat, I can probably get something approaching a quart
Mm-hmm.
of tallow. So a good 20 to 24 ounces,
Okay,
volume
and
wise.
then do you refrigerate it,
No,
or you just
it
put it
does
in the
not need
pantry?
refrigeration.
Okay.
Yep. I just keep it, I keep a little bit by the stove and the bulk of it I keep in cool, dark place.
Mm, okay.
Okay. Just
Okay.
to keep it out of the sunlight for whatever reason.
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
But yeah, yeah, it's really the great thing about tallow. There's three things that are really great about tallow. Number one, it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's rendered beef fat and it's really, really good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it's got a very high smoke point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do high temperature cooking with it. And number three, it's flavor neutral. So listen to this, okay? My son goes to me, can you make me a chocolate cake? And I said, well, I go, let me look at the recipe. Okay. So listen to this. So the recipe's got sugar, flour, cocoa powder, half a cup of vegetable oil. Okay. And I said, there's not much I can do about the sugar. I'll just use pure cane sugar. The flour, I'll use the flour from France because
Mm-hmm.
it's really good. Instead of cocoa powder, I use cacao powder
Mm-hmm.
because cacao is not heat processed. Okay. So it's
Okay.
much more nutrient dense. Okay. And instead of a half a cup of vegetable oil, I use a half a cup of tallow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've got a chocolate cake. And it also called for a cup of milk. So I use raw milk and a couple of eggs. And we get our eggs from a friend of ours. Their parents have a farm, and we get all our eggs
Mm-hmm.
from their chickens. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So no factory eggs. So I took every ingredient and I replaced it with the healthiest version. Okay. And I made a chocolate cake, and let me tell you, it feels good. Okay.
Hmm.
To eat this chocolate cake, it actually feels good. And, you know, I don't eat a lot of it. I'll take a half of a slice just to try it. But with the cacao powder, my
Hmm.
God, the cacao powder and the tallow,
Hmm.
okay, it's the most amazing thing I've ever made. Um, besides, a grass-fed burger.
So I'm just wondering, I'm just curious if you could kind of tweak the recipe a little bit and actually make it more like a chewy brownie. I'll bet you could do that.
I bet you could. Um, if you wanted to make it more like a brownie, well, brownies tend to be overly sweet. So um, you might be tempted to add a little bit less because in the chocolate cake recipe, it calls for 1 cup of boiling water.
Mm.
You could
Hmm.
add less water and make it a little bit dense, or
Hmm.
maybe no water.
Hmm.
Okay.
Well, and my mom
If
has
you
a
want, I'll send.
recipe, yeah, or has a recipe for brownies. Texas sheet cake is what she called it, and it was good, but it was like I've always been a little bit conscientious about what I ate, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, that's an awful lot of sugar in there, and I think it actually had
yeah,
sour cream in either the batter or the icing. I can't remember, and I just
yeah.
couldn't bring myself. I was going to make it one day, it was years ago, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So it was like, I wonder if I could just use for yogurt, Greek yogurt, and I did, and it was fantastic.
Hmm. Well, yogurt, you have to be very careful with store-bought yogurt. Actually, I don't buy store-bought yogurt. I did try making it myself a couple of times, but I didn't quite get the knack of it.
Hmm.
Um, but I would prefer, like, for the pizza that I make, I can make my own mozzarella cheese with raw milk, and it
Mm,
takes
okay.
20 minutes. I take some milk, put it in the pot, bring it up to 200, put in some vinegar, give it 10 minutes, and it's done. You strain it and it's done. And it tastes great. Okay.
Wow.
So, yeah, can you do it with rennet and stretch it and do all that? Sure. But what I found is that the cheese I can make from the raw milk, it's great. It's great
Hmm.
and it takes 20 minutes. Okay.
Hmm.
You really can't beat it. So the recipe is real simple. For a gallon of, and I don't usually do a whole gallon, I usually do a fraction of it. But for a gallon of raw milk, I bring it up to about 200, and then or was it, no, I think it was 100. Bring it up to about 100 and 100 and low change, and I add 7/8 of a cup of vinegar, and then you just give it a quick stir and just let it sit, it solidifies, strain it, you're good. So
White vinegar.
white vinegar, right?
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, white vinegar. So, yeah, so you can make your own cheese from raw milk. You're better off making your yogurt from the raw milk. Although with the yogurt, you tend to have to heat it a little bit higher. So you're probably killing off the beneficial bacteria
Hmm.
in the raw milk. So, one of my favorite things is to take a cold glass of raw milk and slowly stir in some Manuka honey,
Hmm.
and you're getting a wealth of healthy bacteria. Actually, honey is one of the few foods that you can actually live on exclusively because you're getting everything you need from honey, raw honey,
Hmm.
not not filtered and processed and heated,
Right.
but
Right.
actual honey. Okay, you could live on it
Hmm.
without a problem. You might get bored, but you could live on raw honey.
Hmm. Well, I'm really getting even more excited to leave Colorado and move to where we're heading because there is a Mennonite community, I think, just south of where we're going to be
Ah,
living, that has, they have farms and, natural products, or everything's organic, blah, blah, blah. So I'm real excited to, have that option because really we don't have a whole lot of
yeah.
that here.
Well, the further south you go, obviously, you can have more farmland,
Hmm.
and more farms. So where I am in Texas, we're surrounded.
Hmm.
You can't drive down the highway without seeing cows grazing on the grass. Um, once you get out of town.
Hmm.
And we have farmers markets. We have all kinds of farms all over the place, and
Hmm.
we get a lot of produce straight from Mexico. and California. So we're kind of in a nice spot, you know.
Hmm.
We get a lot of goodness all around us. And we have plenty of farms that, like I said, sell raw milk and raw
Hmm.
milk products.
Hmm.
And I'm not really, I mean, if you said to me, what's your favorite food, I'm not going to say milk, okay?
Hmm.
But if you try the raw milk, you'll be sold. It
Hmm.
feels right. It just feels right. So, yeah, a good diet, number one, no question about it.
Hmm. Well, I don't think I could bring myself to do the raw milk. I could probably cook with it, but even as a little kid, I hated milk. I've never been able to drink it. I just, even the thought of it makes me like, ugh. I just can't do it. I don't know why.
Well, you're a respiratory doctor, right? So
No,
every
therapist,
but
therapist.
respiratory therapist, right? So everybody knows that milk causes phlegm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you have a cold, you tell the person with the cold, don't have milk or yogurt or cheese because it
Mm-hmm.
generates more phlegm. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you have a natural, what's the word? Aversion to dairy products because of the work that you're
Well, thank you for saying that. I think it's just because, ew, I just don't like it.
in.
I have one of my cousins who was one of my best friends. Like I said, I grew up with four sisters and three girl cousins. We grew up as one big family, and the one who is just she's 2 months older than me. And my grandfather used to joke and say that he was going to buy her a cow and strap her to it because she was constantly. She loved milk. Milk was the best thing, and I was like, I couldn't even look at it.
Well, we all have our preferences, right?
Yes, we
Nothing
do.
wrong with that.
So
And it's funny, yeah.
no, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, I was just going to say that a lot of times with females, I find in my acupuncture practice, females sometimes have an aversion to dairy
Hmm.
because, okay, and this is now going into Chinese medical theory, okay, acupuncture theory, because there's a condition with the female reproductive system called spleen overacting on liver. Now, let me explain, okay? In Chinese medicine, the liver channel governs the female reproductive system,
Hmm.
okay? And the spleen is responsible for digestion and water transportation throughout the body. Think, lymph fluid, okay?
Hmm.
So what happens is if a female has a diet that is not good for the spleen, which I'll explain, that can overact on the liver and cause menstrual symptoms, infertility. Okay. Now, what's bad for the spleen? Dairy,
Mm.
cold foods, okay, excess starches. Okay, why? Okay. Dairy kind of clogs things up a little bit, right?
Hmm.
Um, Dairy requires extra digestion. Um, Starches and sugars also make the spleen work overtime.
Hmm.
Okay. And cold foods, okay. Cold foods, just think of a glass of cold water in the summer. The water beads up on the side.
Hmm.
Cold foods attract more moisture. Okay. So when you have foods that are cold in nature, cold in temperature, and you have foods that attract more moisture, you're making the spleen work extra hard. And when it does that, it causes the liver channel to have an imbalance. And when the liver channel has an imbalance, you get menstrual symptoms plus reproductive system system problems like fibroids, endometriosis, and PCOS.
Mm.
So what I tell my female patients is have a good diet, okay? And if you do have a cold meal like a salad or something, start with a hot beverage. So, for example, if you go to an American restaurant, what's the first thing they give you when you sit down? A glass of ice water.
Hmm.
Worst possible thing you can do. When you go to a Chinese restaurant, what's the first thing you get when you sit down? A pot of hot tea.
Hmm.
Okay, why? Because it's ingrained in Chinese culture that when you have a meal, you have a hot drink first because your spleen and your stomach are paired. Your
Hmm.
spleen and your stomach, the first thing they do to your food when you eat it is they warm it up. Okay.
Oh.
So if you consume cold foods and foods that attract moisture, you are making your spleen and stomach work extra hard. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to start your day with a cup of hot tea or hot coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You want to start your meal with a cup of hot tea or just room temperature water at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My wife is from Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
She never drinks anything that's below room temperature. Never. Even in the middle of the summer, she'll drink water, but she won't drink anything cold. Okay. Because it's ingrained in the culture not to drink cold beverages because it makes your spleen work hard and that
Wow.
causes menstrual symptoms. Okay. So I one time had a patient, nice young woman came in and she had been trying to, it was in August, and she had been trying to get pregnant since January. So for 8 months, she'd been trying to get pregnant. I took one look at her. I go, oh, I go, you're blood deficient. I go, it's your diet. Okay. I go, I gave her the diet, no sugar, no starch, no alcohol, leafy green vegetables, healthy fats, good quality proteins. Okay. And I also gave her a Chinese herbal medicine called Xiao San, which has a few things in it that nobody's ever heard of. But it has things in it for the liver and for the spleen, okay,
Mm-hmm.
to try to get these two talking again. Okay. She got pregnant within a month because her spleen and liver were so mad at each other, okay,
Oh,
that the liver channel was causing her to look wan, okay, by making her blood deficient. And the spleen was not getting the food that it needed, so it was attacking the liver channel. And once she corrected her diet and took the herbal medicine, she went to the races.
wow.
Okay. Um, and it's actually she had two kids over the course of a few years, and I induced labor with both of them. Most people don't know this, but with acupuncture, when a woman is, what do they call full term these days? Like 35 or 38 weeks or whatever.
I
Once
think
you're
so.
quote unquote full term, I do some acupuncture on certain points, and typically within a couple of days, the woman will deliver. I
Mm-hmm.
had I had this one patient, nice woman. She was overdue, and it was here in Texas. And I said to her, I go, where are you from? She said, Iowa. I go, you have a mom, maybe some sisters there? She said, yeah. I go, well, you're missing your support network. Okay. I go, I don't think the acupuncture is going to, I go, we'll do the acupuncture, but I don't think it's going to help because you need your female support group around you to properly deliver this child. And she had the baby the next day when she realized that she needed her support group. You see, it was a psychological block, and
Right.
I wasn't trying to trick her or anything. I was just telling her the way it was. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and once you understand a little bit of Jungian psychology, you get that a female, especially. Okay, a lot of men are loners. Okay, they like
Mm-hmm.
being alone. They like going out on the hunt and being alone. But females are more pack animals. So
Mm-hmm.
females tend to need support around them, especially the most female activity you can have is having a baby, right? That
Mm-hmm.
defines a female is being able to have a baby. So once she realized that she needed her mother and her sister around her, she called them up. She had the baby, and then they arrived soon after that, and she had her support group. So she felt more comfortable psychologically having the baby, knowing that she had her important people around her.
Mm-hmm.
Just a
Wow.
really interesting psychological, study.
Yeah, what a story. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about, okay, Jungian psychology and Buddhism and Taoism. When did you start your study of those practices or those areas?
Well, Taoism is a product of China. Buddhism is a product of India,
Hmm.
and Confucianism is also a product of China. And I compare these three. Okay, Buddhism is more closely resembling Taoism,
Hmm.
but Confucianism, Kung Fu Tzu, as you would say in Chinese,
Hmm.
is Confucianism is more of a study of family duty. duty to your parents, okay, your ancestors, your brothers and sisters, okay, relationships between family members, and all the rights and responsibilities thereof, okay.
Mhm.
So Confucianism is an external set of rules imposed upon a family, dictating the behaviors that are required of you in order to fulfill your filial duty. Okay.
Mhm.
Taoism, as the counterbalance to that, Taoism says you really only have one responsibility: to look inside yourself for all the answers that you seek. Okay. And to live in harmony with nature.
Mhm.
Okay. Because once you live in harmony with nature, good and evil disappear. All of
Mhm.
duality disappears. So there's this famous story in Taoism where there was a Chinese man, and these two females came together to visit his house, and one of them was representing good and bestowing all good things upon him, and the other one was representing evil and trying to take all things away from him. So as the story goes on, he gets all these good things and he gets all these bad things happen to him. But what happens is eventually he kicks them both out
Mhm.
because it's representing the person who becomes enlightened and realizes that you don't need either good or evil. You
Mhm.
have to transcend above that. And the way you do that is by living in harmony with nature, because as the saying goes, the lion does not feel remorse when it hunts to kill and eat. Okay. It's just fulfilling its responsibility. Okay.
Mhm.
Its responsibility is to cull the herd. Okay.
Mhm.
So the lion attacks and eats, and it doesn't feel guilty. Okay.
Mhm.
Why would it feel guilty? Okay.
Mhm.
So when a person acts in harmony with nature, there is no longer any good or evil. So what happened to me was I was in college, and I noticed that um, if I kind of left some things to chance, that things would turn out just fine.
Mhm.
Okay. So a lot of times we'll fret over a big decision, or maybe there's a problem. Okay. And what you find out is that a lot of times, if you just leave it alone, it'll resolve itself.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I'm not talking about, if somebody hits you on the head with a hammer, okay, you got to deal with that. Okay. But a lot of times if there's problems, it'll usually fit into a couple of different categories. And we all know the three buckets: things you have
Mhm.
no control over, things you have some control over, things you have total control over. Well, in Taoism, they separate fate and destiny. Okay.
Mhm.
You have a destiny. Some things are going to happen. You might be destined to meet this one person. You might be destined to become, an artist or a carpenter. Um, but by your decisions, you create your fate. Okay.
Mhm.
So you have some wiggle room in there. Okay. So with Taoism, um, you have a fate, you have a destiny. Your destiny is predetermined, your fate you determined by your decisions. So what happens? Well, everything that you do creates your karma, right? We all know the word
Mhm.
karma. Karma is Sanskrit for doing. So
Mhm.
we say it's your own karma, it's your own doing. Okay. So the the goal of Taoism is to live without creating karma. Okay. And the way you do that is you live in harmony with nature,
Mhm.
and you take life as it comes, and you go with the flow. You go with the flow of nature. Okay. So the great Tao, the great
Mhm.
way, can be compared to a river. Okay.
Mhm.
And you can say, well, you can either float down the river and just go with the flow.
Mhm.
You can fight against it, in which you'll have a lot of resistance,
Mhm.
or you can swim with the current and go with the flow. Okay.
Mhm.
So what happens to a person who goes against the flow? Well, they have a lot of friction in their lives. They have a lot of problems. There's always something bad happening. There's always a dilemma. There's always a decision. There's always something that is troublesome. Okay.
Mhm.
And what about the person who just kind of does the back float and just floats down the river? Well, they have a lot less problems, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But they might hit a snag here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the person that swims with the current, the person that lives in harmony with nature fully? They don't have a lot of problems, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They may not be wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But you know what? They don't have stress
Mm-hmm.
from their job, okay? Maybe they have a very simple job, okay? Maybe they make furniture,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Maybe they, work a simple desk job, and their job is just to be nice to people that come in, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they live very simply, and don't invite, um, what's the word? Uh, Dilemma.
Conflict or
Yeah, they don't invite conflict, and maybe they don't invite contention, but contention is necessary for growing.
mm-hmm.
So you have to have a little bit of contention to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they pick and choose their contention.
Mm-hmm.
They choose the healthy contention. Okay. Maybe they have a problem that they need to resolve with their own personal growth. And
Mm-hmm.
that's their chosen contention. How do I get through to my next level of growth?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to, adjust my diet or get more
Mm-hmm.
sunshine, or maybe I
Mm-hmm.
need to meditate more, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I need to improve a relationship with a person that's close to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I had a friend where I used to work one time when I was in corporate, and he was telling me how he hated this one person. And I go, here's a challenge. I go, make that person your friend. And he was taken aback. He goes, make them a friend. I go, yeah. I go, it was a woman. I go, find out what she likes, find out what makes her tick, and take an interest in it and talk to her about it. And he couldn't believe what I was saying. Okay. And so he did it. And he goes, I can't believe it. He goes, she's as nice as anybody I've ever met. Okay. Another time I had a friend come to me and she was complaining about her neighbor who was being nasty to her and saying all these things. I go, you know what? I go, maybe something happened to her because it sounds like her reaction to whatever the situation is way out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
I go, it sounds like something happened to her and she just couldn't control her emotions. And so she was using this as an opportunity to vent on you. I go, why don't you go talk to her? And the first thing you say to her is there something wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you seem like you're in a really bad mood. And so she did it. And she's like, you were so right. She had this and this happen to her. And she was really sad
Mm-hmm.
and really mad. And we made up and now we're friends again.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find is that um, if you choose your contention properly, you will grow as a result of it. But if you choose to go against your own nature and you choose to go against the flow of your life,
Mm-hmm.
you will have additional contention that, God or universe or whoever your God is trying to tell you, look, you're not living your life right. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
throwing all this extra contention at you, and you just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're going to keep throwing contention at you until you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I realized when I was 20 years old that if I just went with the flow, things turned out okay.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever opportunity presented, I would I would embrace it. If something bad happened, I would embrace it. Okay. So there's the famous Taoist story of the Chinese farmer. Stop me if
Mm-hmm.
you've heard this one.
Well, I
So
might have
there's
heard it, but maybe the listeners haven't.
so there's this Chinese farmer, and he has a son, and he's got a horse. And one day his horse runs away. So the
Mm-hmm.
neighbors all see this and they say, "Oh, it's too bad your horse ran away." And he's like, "Well, maybe." And then the next day the horse comes back and it brings a couple of wild horses with it. And the neighbors all see this and they go, "Oh, you're so lucky. You have all these extra horses." And he goes, "Well, maybe." And then the next day his son is trying to break in one of the wild horses and he falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbors all see this and they say, "Oh, that's too bad. Your son broke his leg." And he goes, "Well, maybe." And then the next day, the conscription officers come around to recruit men for the army, but they don't take his son because he's got a broken leg. And
Mm-hmm.
the neighbors all say, "Oh, you're so lucky." And he goes, "Well, maybe."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the moral of the story is you can't judge an event without the benefit of hindsight. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if something good happens, you know, oh, what's that famous story about the king in the Middle East? I forget where, and he told his goldsmith, "I have this gold ring. Make an inscription that will support, that will carry me through bad times and temper me through good times." And he writes on the ring, "This too shall pass." Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way you have to look at it. This too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's good or bad, you have to embrace it.
Mm-hmm.
Make it a part of you. A lot of times I have anxiety patients and they just don't know how to deal with it. They haven't really learned cognitive behavioral therapy, talking to themselves, talking them through the anxiety. So I go, look, I go, right now, you're looking at this anxiety as something that's alien to you, that's happening to you. I go,
Mm-hmm.
you have to look at the anxiety as part of you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you make it part, and this is getting a little bit into Jungian psychology, once you make that anxiety a part of you, now you can control it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But until you do, you will continue to fight it. And you will fight it in a negative way that you won't get any growth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But if you embrace it and say, yes, I have anxiety, this is part of me, and I just have to talk to myself and deal with
Mm-hmm.
it, you'll be a lot better off in the long run because as you practice that,
Mm-hmm.
and I know because I started having anxiety when I was 14. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it for a good 20 years. And
Wow.
I continually practiced self-talk, never took a drug in my life
Mm-hmm.
for anxiety. Took some Chinese herbal medicine, which worked great, but always practiced self-talk. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Always worked through it, embraced it. And now it is no more. Now it is
Mm-hmm.
history. So I invite anybody that's suffering from anxiety or fertility issues or diet issues to send me an email because, I'll give you whatever I've got on it. And I've got a lot. I've got a lot.
Okay, that is a beautiful segue. So I don't know if you did that intentionally or not, but how can the listeners get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
They can always email me at goldentouchacupuncture@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces, no dashes, no nothing. Golden Touch Acupuncture at gmail.com.
And
I
of
always
course,
respond.
it's in the show notes, so you can always find it. So, Thomas, thank you so much for being here. My goodness, this has just been like, a wealth of information, and I can't wait to start trying some of the stuff. I'm going to have to bring myself to do the tallow thing. And
It's not
as
hard.
far as as far as like the getting the wheat from Italy or France, do you just go online and order,
Yeah.
or how do you do that? Okay.
Yeah. I went on Amazon and I just looked for specifically wheat from those two
Mm-hmm.
countries because obviously, you want to make a pizza, you get wheat from Italy. You want to make, breads and cakes, you get it from France.
Okay.
So, I don't even want to profit from any of this, but I did buy Caputo with a C, Caputo wheat flour from Italy for pizza, and I got Francine wheat flour from France,
Mm-hmm.
all purpose, and it makes great breads and cakes and pizza,
Okay.
and no
Well,
glyphosate.
oh,
So,
nice.
so my son, who is gluten intolerant, he
Mm-hmm.
eats it no problem. As a matter of fact, I made some brioche yesterday, and he ate three of them. So
Well, you must be a pretty good cook.
it's not hard once you practice.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. You do
Right.
it a few times, you get to know it, and I can make all this stuff without even looking at the recipe. So it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of fun.
Well, like I said, that's on my to-do list to explore that a little bit more. I got to the point where I don't use laundry detergent or anything like that. I make my own,
That's great.
and that was really pretty empowering. And and the clothes are so much cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife made laundry detergent from what is it? Baking soda. Um, what's that stuff called?
Borax?
Borax, and something else with a Z. Um, Zappa or something like that. She had some
Uh,
kind of soap. Do you know
no,
what I'm
I
talking
didn't
about?
use. Yeah, no, I've heard of it. I think I don't use that. I use the baking soda, borax, a little bit of borax, kosher salt,
Kosher salt. Okay.
and white vinegar.
White vinegar. Yeah, we use white vinegar as a fabric softener.
Mm-hmm.
And in the dryer, I just have those cotton balls
Mm-hmm.
for taking the static out.
Mm-hmm.
We have about a dozen of those cotton balls in the dryer. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so we make our own laundry detergent. We make all our own food, um, within reason,
Mm-hmm.
and we order all stuff that's not from the United States when it comes to grains. As a matter of fact, I won't eat a grain that comes from this country.
Yeah.
And also, oh, the other thing we do not eat is farm raised fish.
Oh
On-
God.
Only wild caught. Because
Yeah.
if you saw what they did to it, you wouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
They color it with dyes and whatever. And the only thing I'll eat is the salmon that's wild caught and the red snapper. My wife has this wonderful recipe for a whole red snapper.
Mm.
She steams it with a little soy sauce, couple of a couple of slices of ginger and scallion, and she steams it to perfection, and
Mm-hmm.
it comes out absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody wants a recipe, let me know.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Because I think really what you ought to do is have a cookbook.
Well,
Easy for me to say.
I've cooked for more than one patient. Um, Most recently, had a nice young couple, and I made them Taiwanese beef noodle soup.
Mm.
It's got besides the beef, it's got scallion, ginger, onion, garlic, tomato, and you put it all together. You simmer the vegetables in tallow, of course,
Of
and then you
course.
add the beef and you add this two or three Asian ingredients. You add some soy sauce, some cooking wine that's from China, Shaoxing.
Mm-hmm.
Shaoxing is the most famous cooking wine in Chinese cooking. So you add Shaoxing cooking wine, and then you add bean curd paste with chili. It gives it a nice spicy aroma.
Ooh.
And then, of course, you add some boiling water and you let the whole thing simmer for a couple of hours. And it's life-giving. That's how good it
Wow.
is. It's like you put it over some nice noodles or something, or you can just eat it without the noodles. And it's the most amazing thing. I've made that for more than one person. It's fantastic. I'm actually making it tomorrow for my son, if anybody wants to come over.
I would like to say I will be there, but I'm not sure how long it would take for me to get there. I mean, you're not that far away.
It would be worth the drive or the flight. But
Yeah,
anyway,
well, Thomas, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Great information. Loved hearing your story. And you've given me and the listeners a whole lot to think about and some new things to try and not to fear the tallow.
If that's the only thing you take away, then it was worth it.
Well, okay. Well, I did take away a lot more than that, but the tallow is going to be keeping me up all night. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. What an amazing episode. What incredible information. And just remember, our bodies are made to heal as long as we give them the right environment to do so. So stay away from the processed food. Go for the greens. Thomas is full of wonderful information. Share this episode with all your friends and family, or at least the ones that you really want to live a long and healthy life. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.